Felcher. I was so excited to be here. It's been a year, if not a wee bit more, in the making. My name is Lewis, and in fact, that reminds me, I'm going to turn on the live transcript. And this is also a reminder for me to slow down, because I've had probably 2 coffees at the moment, so that may just to calm down and take a moment. But lovely to see you all, and we're going to introduce our team very shortly. You're going to get to meet them all alongside our action researchers. Many here are here today. So this is the Mental Health Inclusive Choir Research Project, which involved, as we said, a year in the coming, a whole process of surveys and action research and literature reviews, and kind of culminating to this point where we're launching our toolkit, which we sent to you over the next coming weeks after the conference. Just in terms of what we've planned today, we've got a real mix. To begin with, we're going to meet some of the kind of research team, as it were, and hearing a bit about the different elements, just a kind of taste of what we found from the research and what we found from the different parts of the process. We'll then have, at about 2:40, an opportunity to talk with our Practitioner Action Researchers. These are singing facilitators from across the UK, in fact, and a wee bit further afield, a Canadian friend as well, to talk about what we covered there in that process and what we took away from that, and all the different contexts. We have a short break, about 2:20, so about 10-minute break before we have our workshops, our kind of short taster practice workshops. And at that point, you'll have a choice of 5. So there'll be 3 workshops you'll do over the hour. They're about 15 minutes each with a wee bit of faff time. And so we'll give the opportunity to have a think about which ones you'd like to do in which order. Well, you can think about that now, and then when you come back from the break, I'll explain how we'll assign you to those breakout rooms. It will be renaming yourself based on the different letters of your choice. So I'll explain that a little bit later. And of course, if you want to take a slightly more extended break and you just want to go to 2 of the sessions, that's absolutely fine as well. They are going to be recorded, so you'll be able to access them. And so don't feel like you're missing out if you can't make all of them, sadly. That's always the challenge with the conference. At 4:30, we'll come back together. We will have an instant conference choir. We're going to sing together. It feels absolutely right for us as we're meeting together as practitioners to sing something, and later in the afternoon. And you can also go grab a wee coffee or tea at home, of course. And in the last 20 minutes, we're going to have a bit of a plenary to talk about what next for the network. And throughout the day, feel free to tweet. We're using hashtag #SingSideBySide or using @SingSideBySide as well. And if there's any technical issues, just give us a shout. The last thing I'll just quickly say is just building on the space and the expectations around the space. I'm sure this goes without saying in many cases, but just to make sure it's very clear, we want it to be a respectful conversation. Of course, being mindful about lived experiences. We are talking about mental health. Please do set boundaries around that, and please don't feel at any point that you need to share anything more than you're prepared to do so, and be, I guess, aware and considerate around that. And we'll ask that mute is the default, but of course, later on, especially when we're on breakouts and in the plenary, there'll be opportunities to unmute in particular. And any questions you can chuck into the text box. There isn't such a thing as a silly question, so please just give us a shout using the text box. And if there's any technical issues, just give us a wee shout in the text box as well. Between myself and Alicia, we'll help support that. Of course, we want this to be a safe space, so just be wary in terms of language, and of course, look after yourself. We've got these breaks built in, but of course, we appreciate 3 hours isn't suitable for everybody, and of course, life is going to happen. So any friend, if you need to step away, don't feel like you need to apologize. That's absolutely fine. Do look after your own health and well-being there. It is a shared space, so just be wary in terms of sharing the space in terms of time, but of course, we do want to hear from you. And then finally, it is a private space. We are recording these sessions. These are going to be shared for those who couldn't join us in person or those who can only join for certain parts of it. Again, similarly, we really welcome you to turn your cameras on. Keep your cameras on just because it's nice to see everybody. But of course, if you prefer not to be in the video or film in that way, please do just turn your cameras off. And when you're in the breakouts, for example, and the discussions, there will be bits which are explicitly going to be recorded, and then there may be bits where you can opt out of recording, and we can just have the discussion to be very individual based on the room. And so just discuss with your kind of facilitator in that instance about that. Brilliant. That's enough from me. I'm going to introduce our principal investigator, Dr. Yoon Irons, who's going to talk a wee bit about the team and the background of the project. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very lovely to be here and meet you all. Thank you for joining us. It's fantastic to have you here. Well, this is our story. We are a multidisciplinary research team. I am very lucky to be working with these wonderful people. The success of our project is accredited to David, Michael, Liesbeth, Louis, Sophie, and Nicola. Next slide, please. So we received a research funding from the March Mental Health Network. March Mental Health Network is primarily concerned with supporting the social, cultural, community assets to promote mental health. Next, please. So our aim was to find out the important skills and knowledge required by community group singing practitioners or facilitators when working in mental health context. To achieve this aim, we have conducted a number of research activities, which my team will introduce to you one by one. So next to Michael, please.
Hi, I'm Michael Bonshor. I have a history of being a singing teacher, choir leader, and singer. So my role has been a team member on this project with you and everybody else. When we first started this project, we decided that we were going to consult with a few people to find out a little bit more about maybe how we could focus the research. So we held two webinars, one with the International Centre for Community Music and one with the Association of British Choral Directors. And the aims of these webinars were to spread the word about what we're doing, what we're trying to find out and why we're doing it. We wanted from the very beginning this to be a co-produced project, co-created, and we wanted to start a consultative dialogue between us, the research team, singers and group singing leaders, and also to start to build a network of researchers, singers and group leaders to share knowledge. We also, of course, wanted to advertise our project and let a range of different people with interests in this area know how they might take part in it. And also just to start spreading the word about the fact that we were hoping to create an online toolkit of resources arising from the research-based evidence for everybody to use. Next slide, please. So our next stage was to carry out a systematic review of the research literature. As most people probably realise, most projects do this to start with, just to make sure they're not reinventing the wheel and to make sure we've not missed anything. Our question that we were trying to answer through our literature search was to find out what information is already available about the core skills and knowledge required by community practitioners and organisers who provide group singing programmes for individuals with mental health conditions. So we were looking at any literature that was peer-reviewed in the academic literature, so articles from peer-reviewed journals, and we were looking at articles mainly that relate to facilitating amateur group singing activities of any kind. So whether it was a church choir, musical theatre society, choral society, community choir, we're interested. And we were looking at these activities that take place in the community for leisure purposes, rather than in a professional, clinical or formal therapeutic setting. So we spent a long time going through quite a lot of different electronic database searches. And we also had some quite strict inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we were only including empirical studies, so research studies that included some kind of evidence that was fairly tangible, that were published in English in peer-reviewed journals, and only since 2000, because of course the world in research does change quite quickly. Next slide, please. And from our literature review, we found that most of the publications that we have out there so far tended to cover three main areas. So firstly, musical skills and knowledge. Secondly, social and interpersonal skills. And thirdly, facilitation and leadership skills. So that one is quite an interesting one to discuss in terms of definition, but it includes all of the activities related to organisation and ensuring the smooth running of the group. As you can see, there's quite a bit under musical skills and knowledge, which is interesting because actually, although several different sets of musical skills were named as being important, they were not referred to very much at all. The thing that was referred to most of all was really the social skills, so creating a relaxed and flexible environment, the way in which we communicate with people, and also some of those softer skills of facilitation and leadership, so encouragement, having a person-centered or singer-centered approach rather than focusing entirely on the music, and providing a really, really positive learning environment with constructive feedback and space for peer learning and support. And across all three of these themes, in several of the articles, whether they were articles that researched singers or singing group leaders, people were mentioning that perhaps there needs to be more training and support for the people who are carrying out these demanding roles, because they are very complex with a great set of varied skills that they need. Okay. Next is we have Sophie is going to talk about the survey.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, hello, I'm Sophie and I'm a research assistant on this project. So we did two surveys, one for choir leaders or singing group leaders and one for singers. I'm going to talk about the group singer leader survey. So we made a survey that we distributed around singing and music organizations, and we publicized via Twitter and word of mouth. The survey was made up of questions that asked the singing group leaders about themselves, so the demographic information and information about their previous training, the types of groups that they have run, and some of that information is on this slide here, as well as questions where we asked them to share their knowledge and experience, or perhaps their lack of knowledge and experience of practices which they felt were mental health inclusive and exclusive, and where they felt that they were supported in their work as group singing leaders, and where they felt they needed better training, support and self-care. So we had 171 group singing leader respondents, and you can see a breakdown of that demographic data here. Something we have to do as researchers is to kind of critically reflect on this data, maybe thinking about whose voices are there and maybe whose are missing. And we can also see here the types of group that are represented. So lots of singing for health groups included, and including mental health and well-being group singing leaders, and the purpose of the group as well, whether that was maybe a well-being focus or an enjoyment focus, or whether that group was more performance orientated. You'll have a copy of these slides. You can have more in-depth look if you would like to later. Could I have the next slide, please? And again, there we go. Yeah. So here are three kind of themes that we pulled out from the data. So we looked at all these responses and sort of categorized them so that we could find these themes. And they actually mirror quite a lot of what Michael was saying from the literature review, which is really interesting. And as researchers, it's really exciting when that happens. So for example, we found within the sort of broader facilitation skills that there were social skills around creating a safe and positive atmosphere, one that's friendly and welcoming and choirs that are open to everyone. We found that there were organizational skills established, such as setting realistic goals and recognizing the achievements of reaching these goals. There were musical skills, such as how to choose rep, or challenges around choosing which songs to sing, thinking about doing warm-ups and why they might be important. Interestingly, just as Michael was saying as well with the literature, the musical skills that were identified as being core to conductor training or choir leader training were not noted as being as important as the skills within inclusive techniques. So we noted maybe that there's a gap in training skills around inclusive musicianship. Within the training needs that were established, there were also extra musical skills and knowledges, specifically around mental health. So people were really keen to know more about mental health inclusive strategies and knowledge of mental health conditions. A theme that also came out was talking about self-care and support needs of the singing facilitators themselves. Loneliness was a really key point that group singing leaders discussed in their survey responses. And so the need for peer support was really key, and something that perhaps has become more readily available in the online world that we've been plunged into in the pandemic. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. I'm just going to draw out some keywords from some of these quotes that kind of represent some of these themes, so you can see how they shaped our formulation of these themes. So, for example, the atmosphere in the room has to be positive, and that starts with the choir leader. Within social skills, it can be important to destigmatize mental health to make sure people feel that they can trust the group and the space. It's important to see the progress being made and celebrating that within these shared goals. Having good communication skills so that you can follow up by email if someone perhaps is struggling, and opening up those dialogues with them. Being flexible with your music choices and thinking about which lyrics are being used. And also, I think it's really important here to know that you're not alone, that you're part of this bigger community. And I think that's something we're going to talk about today. That in a nutshell, very quickly, was some of our survey findings.
Brilliant.
I guess that's over to me then. Thank you, Sophie. So Sophie has discussed, my name is, by the way, I'm Liesbeth Tip. I'm co-applicant on this project, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I work for the University of Edinburgh as a clinical fellow. And Sophie has discussed the findings from the perspective of the choir leaders. We also did a survey for choir members, so you'll probably see quite a lot of overlap in the findings. So what Sophie was discussing is what choir leaders thought was working and was relevant for a mental health inclusive choir. So now we'll see what choir members thought of that. And there's a lot more information about this. So this was just one of the questions. So there's more to follow later on from that survey. But as you can see here, we had a really large group of participants, of people from different choir backgrounds, community choirs, choral societies, Singing for Breathing, musical theatre, and some other singing groups. The mean age was quite high, 55.79, but the age range was also very wide. So we did capture a whole range of views from people. As is expected from choir research, for choir members, the majority was female. And ethnicity was predominantly white. And next slide, please. Yeah, so it was, as you call it, thematic analysis. So we looked at the data and pulled out the quotes in the answers from people, and based on that, found some themes in the data as the previous survey used as well. And the answers could be roughly divided up to what choir members thought was helpful for mental health and well-being in the choirs was choir leader skills, choir leader as a person, a person of influence, and a choir leaders and mental health. And what choir members appreciated was a clear leadership with the structure, professional, things like that is what they mentioned. Then interpersonal skills were important. So communication, understanding, creating a safe atmosphere, being able to promote the group processes and also involving themselves in the choir and promoting involvement between members. Then musical skills, of course, that was almost everybody mentioned that as well. That is, an obvious requirement. And there were people that mentioned some specifics as well about training, ability to arrange music, but also flexibility in adapting music choices, for example, the repertoire, or adapting the teaching to certain levels. And that also ties in with the next theme on the leadership, on the choir leader skills, the teaching skills. So that could be very practical, in a practical or more personal level. And it ties in with the other skills as well. Then flexibility in ways of teaching. So having a kind of a toolkit of different methods and techniques, being able to adapt it to the level of the choir and of the person and tailor it to the specific choir as well. And also some technological aspects, which was mentioned less frequently, but in the time of Zoom rehearsals is also important. And then choir leader as a person was the second theme that came up. And that was in general, and it was mostly about, being a charismatic, a positive force, enthusiastic, driven, and being able to engage the choir with that. Always keep on learning, having a vision. Just a real force of nature, basically. And then choir leader as a person was also described. What was important for well-being and mental health is how the choir leader behaved towards the members, and values as equality and inclusivity, and attitudes that go with that, like being welcoming and accepting. And then understanding and adapting, and again that ties in with the teaching and the musical ability adapt to the person, but also being able to spot that is necessary was a skill. Then having a team spirit, and just wanting to promote the choir as a positive experience for the members, and also using humor and making rehearsals fun is mentioned a lot, and optimize the musical experiences. And that's mostly about encouraging people to be the best they can be within the choir, but without putting pressure on them. And then it was also about being a nice person, so being patient, compassionate, empathetic, encouraging and supportive. And then as the last point, choir leaders and mental health. Oh, can we go back? Yeah, thank you. Choir leaders and mental health. Skills around mental health, so being able to understand mental states of members and being able to respond to that in an adequate way, and then knowledge about mental health, like mental health first aid training was mentioned, so a broader understanding. And then the attitude towards mental health, being inclusive, and also just balance the activities within a choir rehearsal or performance, so it is beneficial for choir members' mental health. And there's a whole range of comments that people made that could help with that, like constructive feedback, preventing negative experiences, being encouraging and always having faith in the choir that they can do things. So it was a whole range. Okay, next slide, please. So here are some quotes just to illustrate those points. So choir leader skills, good at managing a group, able to manage difficult personalities, and connect with choir members are the best leaders. Then choir leader as a person, a sense of humor and fun. What else does it say? Being empathetic. Yeah, so they should be committed to an equalities approach. and also being perceptive of, how a comment can have a huge impact on the choir member, and kindness. And then choir leaders and mental health in the bottom row, awareness of mood and being able to respond and recognize when people are struggling. And yeah, accepting that people can have their own challenges in life, and with their mental health and inclusion. So I hope that illustrates a bit in a more concrete way what I just talked about. And that's me.
Thank you. I'm David Sheffield. I'm a health psychologist based at the University of Derby. And as you've heard from Michael, Sophie and Liesbeth, we've collected a fair amount of information, indeed quite a lot of information from the literature, from our two surveys as well of choir leaders and group singing facilitators, and also those people who are taking part in those singing groups as well. So one of the things we've then been thinking about is how do we take that information and create a toolkit that's going to be helpful for those people who are facilitating group singing. And one way in doing that is by using the Mental Health Foundation's 5 Ways to Wellbeing pathways. Mental Health Foundation kind of basically talk about 5 ways in which activities that everyone might do that help with mental health, mental well-being of everyone, actually, both those people who might be having some challenges in terms of their mental health, but also those who are doing okay as well. And they talk about these five things that you can see here: connection, activity, noticing, learning, and giving. So they've got some ideas of what those things are on the slide. So connection is basically connecting with people, connecting with, for example, your family, with friends, in meaningful ways, taking part in meaningful activities. Activity, as we know, physical activity and exercise is very helpful in terms of mental health and in terms of well-being as well. And the idea here is to make activity a regular part of your life. Taking notice is paying attention to things that are going on at this very moment, in your present moment, and paying attention to your thoughts and feelings in relation to that. And that's often being kind of thought of as kind of being mindful. Learning seems to be very important and helpful for people's well-being as well. So engaging with new activities, new challenges, participating in new hobbies, or new kind of leisure activities, such as learning a new language. And we also know that giving is helpful as well, giving you the time of expressing gratitude to others, helping out both practically and also kind of with empathy, for example, by listening to people and showing that you're attending to them. And we thought these 5 ways actually are really easy to evidence within group singing, as you can see in the next slide. So we recognize that singing, in particular group singing, kind of actually engages each of these 5 pathways without kind of having to really force the issue, that actually you can do activities or engage in these 5 ways within kind of group singing without forcing the issue, without struggling to think, okay, how do we engage these pathways within group singing? So for example, connection, you can use songs, hello songs and action songs to connect to people. You can use the time before and after singing to say hello to people and to find out how they're doing as well. And with action songs, that might also involve things like touch as well, where you can feel more connected to people. Singing often involves, or also kind of implicitly involves, some degree of physical activity. Singing itself is not a passive task, but also kind of like for many of you, I'm sure, kind of will be used to warm up exercises that kind of engage the whole body. but singing itself is actually kind of like a physical activity as well. And we know that people are, feel like they've done exercise after taking part in singing. When you're singing, you often kind of like deliberately attending to what's going on. You're having to pay attention to the sounds, the harmonies, the notes, the musical phrases, where your singing part fits with others. So you're kind of attending to the things that are going on in that current moment, and also your feelings. You're able to kind of to understand and to think, well, actually, this is making me feel happy and contented as you're doing that. We know that when people do group singing, they're often engaging in learning activities as well. There's often new songs to learn and to sing, and even old songs can be made kind of fresh again with different harmony parts, for example. The other thing that we're also aware of is that people kind of like get to know new people as well, actually learning potentially about different cultures, people's different experiences, and also maybe their different languages as well. And finally, there's opportunities to give as part of kind of group singing as well, that often there's opportunities to help out. Might be something as simple as moving the chairs and the furniture around at the start or end of singing, but also recognizing the leaders' support at the start, maybe praising individuals for the singing they've done and the experience that they've shared as well. So you can see how these 5 ways to well-being are present within group singing practices.
Thank you. So I'm Nicola Wydenbach, and I'm also a research assistant on this project, but I'm also a practitioner, and I run a mental health choir at the Maudsley, which is part of the South London and Maudsley Hospital Trust, which is a mental health trust, one of the largest in the UK, but based in South East London. So taking that 5 ways to wellbeing, we then decided to do action research. Action research is where we actually kind of tested out, discussed, came up with ideas with other practitioners. So the research team and I think it was 5 singing leaders from across the world, actually, because we had someone from Canada. We had 6 initial online meetings, including planning. And we had the singing leaders were from all different types of choirs, including LGBTQ+, to a cancer choir, to general singing and wellbeing groups. And we used the 5 ways to wellbeing model to focus on the things that have been drawn out of the survey and the systematic review, and we kind of discussed these, and we came up with our own toolkit. Can I have the next slide, please? So over those course of those meetings, we discussed safeguarding and boundaries, online versus real life, facilitation and co-production. And what I mean by co-production is actually working with your choir, so making sure that things that you decide, whether that be repertoire, etc., comes from the choir themselves. We also obviously address musical skills because it's a musical activity, but we also talked about social interpersonal skills and, of course, mental health awareness. And we used a variety of tools, not just discussion. We used a lot of online tools such as Mentimeter. And I just thought I'd show you, before I hand back to Lewis, the next slide. So we used this amazing facility, and we were all given different coloured Post-its. And we kind of, having discussed and chatted, we would often add to this kind of online kind of, I suppose it's like a big drawing board, really. And out of this, all these ideas and thoughts came our toolkit. So I'm going to hand over to Lewis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So that hopefully gives you a bit of a sense of the scope of the program, and as myself and Alicia from the perspective of developing the toolkit, which you'll all see and have in your inboxes very soon, aiming to be end of next week, the beginning of the next one following. to really kind of draw some of that insights all together. And so really excited about that. We were really excited about the action research element, where really everyone was the expert, and that's the other great thing about the expert. The framing around action research is that everyone's sharing expertise, and so we're going to hear from those action researchers who are such a fundamental part of the toolkit very shortly. But we're just going to have a little bit of a short performance, a little break that from Harmony Choir, who we've worked with and Liesbeth is part of. And we've got the director Ben, who's given a bit of context introducing the song. So this is a good opportunity if you want to keep your computers on and listen and want to take a step away, refresh your glasses. That's absolutely fine. I think it's about 6 or 7 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to have our panel discussion. Now, of course, if you've got any questions in the meanwhile, do capture them into the chat, and then we'll come back to them as we come along as well. So don't feel like we're not wanting space for that at all. So I'll just, in fact, I'm going to stop sharing for a second just to make sure that everything I'm sharing the sound. There you are. All right, enjoy.
Hello, I'm Ben Jones, and I've been the musical director of Harmony Choir here in Edinburgh since it was founded in 2016. And the choir started as a research project into the effects of singing on mental health and on mental health stigma. And so by its very nature, the choir had to include a mixture of people with and without experience of mental ill health. The project was originally supposed to run for just about 3 months, but it's been 5 years now and we're still going strong. The choir's come on leaps and bounds really in that time. And members have come and gone, but overall the ethos and the spirit of Harmony Choir has proved extremely resilient. And we're still proud to call ourselves a mental health inclusive choir. People sometimes ask me, well, what does that mean exactly? And really the best answer that I can come up with is that, well, we're inclusive because we, as a choir, go out of our way to create an environment in which we can all just be ourselves. People coming to a Harmony Choir rehearsal know that they're going to be accepted without any judgment, that it's a safe space and it's a welcoming space, that you don't have to talk about what's going on in your life, but if you do, then people will listen and they will support you. And they also know that when we're making music together, we're all equals. Everyone has their own part to play. It doesn't matter what sort of day you've had or what sort of label the outside world wants to put on you. You leave all that behind. Choir, it's just you and your voice and everyone else and their voices. And it's really fun. As the musical director, I'm really proud of what Harmony Choir has done over the last few years, and particularly over the last 18 months or so during the pandemic. We've all been rehearsing online, remotely, since March 2020 when the pandemic struck. We've had a lot of fun that way. The virtual choir is very much going strong. So I'd like to share with you the first recording that we actually ever made from the comfort of our own living rooms. It's a song about friendship. It's a song about hope. And it's a song from the musical Dear Evan Hansen. It's a song called You Will Be Found.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear?
Like you could fall and no one would hear.
Well, let that lonely feeling
streaming in. You reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
There's a place where you don't have to feel all alone. And every time that you fall out, you're a little less alone.
If you only say the word, from across the silence, your voice is heard. Someone will come running. Someone will come running. Someone will come running to take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun go streaming in, 'cause you reach up and you rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. Out of the shadows, the morning is breaking, and all is new, all is new. It's clear on the ending. Suddenly I see that all is new, all is new.
You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone.
You are alone. You are alone. You are alone. You are alone. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need someone to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. When the sun comes streaming in, 'cause you reach up and you rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. Even when the dark comes crashing through, you will be found. If you need someone to carry you, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
Hey, I think we can give him a bit of a round of applause there. Whew. Oh, there's Ben again. Hold on, move on. Whew. I always feel a little bit emotional with that one. You will be found indeed. What a great. Couldn't stop joining in. Absolutely. Hopefully, with your mutes, you had the absolute pleasure of joining in there. And thank you again to Liesbeth and Ben and Harmony Choir in Edinburgh for sharing that video and that context. Yeah, that's exactly why we're here. We're going to come to our panel discussion now, and we're going to invite the action researchers who are in the room at the moment to join us to talk a little bit about what they, what mental health means to them, and what they've taken from the action research, some of the tools, some of the frameworks, some of the discussions really, and it just feels like a lot of opportunity for stories, and it's been an absolute privilege as Science Katie to facilitate that process, because it's about valuing everyone's expertise. So what I might suggest now is we've got a few people in the room, some people who are not here, but I just want to acknowledge those, everybody for now. So we've got Dr. Kathleen Cronie, who's listening in, but won't be joining us. Will be in the chat. We've got Carole Miller, who'll join us and stay on screen from the Western Isles. Dr. Alicia Stark, who's not with us at the moment, I don't think, but correct me if I'm wrong. Kathy Matkin-Clapton, who is from Canada, and Marika Rauscher, who is finishing off a class at the moment, and she may literally just jump in to the Zoom, and I'm hoping that she will be able to just about make it for some of the panel. Alicia is here. Fantastic. Well, awesome. Brilliant. So what I'm going to suggest, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and just for the panel aspect, I would just ask everyone who's not a panelist just to turn their screens off just for this moment, if that's okay. Hey, Alyssa, sorry, I totally missed you there. There's Kathy, fantastic, Carole, wonderful. And I'm just going to stop Christine's video, and Tracy, I'll stop your video as well, if that's okay. Thank you. So we'll just get a little bit of a focus, just a bit of a hush. If we were in a room, we'd have the lights down on you. So my job is just to be the facilitator. It's quite easy. So the first question is if you could briefly introduce yourselves, and we'll go in the order that I see on the screen. So Carole, Kathy, and then Alyssa. And maybe share what mental health inclusion in singing means to you in your own context. So tell us who you are and a little bit on that. Carole, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Carole Miller, and I live on the Isle of Lewis, where I lead a cancer choir. It isn't just people who have cancer that come along, it's people who are affected by cancer. So it could be that a friend or a relative has got cancer. And it was started up because of the Tenebris project in Wales, where they discovered that the inflammatory markers in your DNA were improved by singing. And so that's where we started from. But getting involved with this project has shown that there are so many other benefits for cancer sufferers and anybody else. We don't audition and we don't ask questions. So there could be people that come that are not involved with cancer at all, but we just don't ask. So everybody's welcome. And so it's been good to have some of my personal opinions affirmed while we've been going through this, because they were just opinions, but now I can quote science behind it, so that's good.
Thanks so much, Carole Manutang. Kathy, same question. Oh, you're on mute.
Well, it's good morning from me because I'm in Western Canada, so I'm a few hours, several hours ahead behind you. I am a conductor of several community choirs in my community, and inclusive to me is the foundation of my approach. So everyone is welcome in my groups, and everyone is good enough, and everyone. My goal, I know what it does for my own mental health, to feel like I belong, to feel like I am seen, and to feel like I matter. And so as a leader of something as glorious as singing together, which I think we're all meant to do, as a leader of something like that, to facilitate that and to do my best to lead that and model that is probably more important to me than the music we make. So I just need to comment on the video that we just saw, and I'm just so moved. I was just smiling and giggling, and because what was seen in that, for me, what I witnessed in that was truly people being seen and everyone feeling that they matter, because I think that is what music, what the potential of singing together can do. And so as a facilitator of singing, of course I want to make beautiful music, and my singers want to make beautiful music. But that's really what we're aiming for, is what was captured in that video. So it's just been such a pleasure. Like Carole, I've had so many opinions on the value of what we do as facilitators of singing, and that can mean a lot of different things, as I see from the chat. Absolutely. There are many different ways to facilitate singing together, but to take something that has always felt so true in my gut, and bring it to life in my philosophy, and to see that science validates that. I think which all music people are looking for, that validation, so we can really truly advocate with facts and rather feelings. So it's just been such a pleasure to be here and be part of this. Thank you very much.
Oh, Kathy, you have such a way of words. You make me greet. You make me cry a bit, I think. Just think, almost like reflecting on that video. And you're right. It's powerful stuff. It's what we do. It's why we do the things we do. And I think there's something there around that link between science and research and that lived expertise versus learned expertise, and really validating both of those things, and that beautiful bit in the middle. Alyssa, to go to yourself.
Hi, everybody. It's a really great pleasure to be here to just be talking about this vital topic. I am a director and a choir leader for Choirs for Good, which is a nonprofit based in Wales. We're a network of community well-being and healthcare choirs. So our motto is that we want to help people feel good and do good for good. And so really tantamount to what we try to do is create spaces that feel very equal, feel very open. Our choirs are open to absolutely anyone. You don't have to have any previous experience. You don't have to be able to carry a tune in a bucket, as I like to say. But what it means in terms of mental health inclusivity, or how I view mental health inclusivity and what's reflected in a lot of our choirs, all of our choirs, is that idea that we can create spaces and environments where people are going to be experiencing just the peak effects of things like happy hormone release, endorphins, serotonin, all those things that we know happen with music. So I jumped straight to the science bit. All the things that we know happen with music and happen with singing, we can create environments where people are going to experience the greatest amount of release of those types of happy chemicals, and really be able to feel the long-term effects. And to talk about something that Carole touched on, that Tenebis research found that the release of those types of happy hormones have an addictive feel to them. And it's the same thing that singing once a week for about an hour's time actually triggers the same parts of our brains that addiction would. So people can get addicted to singing and addicted to having those happy hormones if they're experiencing it often enough.
Thanks, Alyssa. And definitely, and there's some lovely comments coming in, and please do keep them coming. We'd love to hear yours. This is a conversation as well. So if you've got any questions, let us know. But Caroline's talking about how the beauty of the words being sung and mental health inclusive, and it's not a vis-a-vis distinction, and that's a good point. Maybe I don't think we did actually distinguish in the sense of mental versus physical. I think. And actually the 5 ways of well-being is a good way, keep active is a key part of it. And I think when we're thinking about that as a framework, really think about how physical health is absolutely tied in with mental health. And actually in some cultures, you don't make a distinction. Actually, it would be a very different concept, actually. So, I mean, I've taken so much from our sessions together. We're going to keep these sessions going, and that's an invite for anyone who's listening. We've decided that we're going to keep these meetings going, and maybe I'm fast forwarding a bit. But what I want to turn back to the people on the panel on this discussion, of course, and anyone else is listening and wants to feed in, please do, particularly Kathleen, who I know is listening as well. So what's something that's really struck you from our meetings together, the action research sessions? It could be a tool, a story, a discussion, and maybe we'll go the other way. We'll go Alyssa, Kathy, and then Carole.
So for me, something that I found very important to our discussions, and I hope everyone here, as you look through the toolkit, will find that there are tools for this in there, is actually that level of self-care for the choir leaders. And it's something that I think that opportunity to be able to chat together, and opportunities like today are so important for us as choir leaders and music facilitators to understand that we need to be in a happy and a healthy place in order to be able to facilitate that in other people. And the level of support and discussion that was going on between us, saying that we had experienced similar things, or we were going through things that were the same, especially through COVID, was so fantastically important. And it was lush to not feel alone. And so just that self-care starts with us, and we wear so many different hats as choir leaders. We're counselors, and we're musicians, and well, to an extent, we are best friends sometimes, and all those types of things. And you have to be able to wear all those different hats with your own health in place first and foremost, so you can deliver your best. So that was something that really rang for me and resonated for me as we had our discussions as a group.
Definitely that sense of shared and particularly over the pandemic, just connecting with others. I think that is a beautiful thing to be able to do that in the action research. Kathy, how about yourself?
Well, I totally agree with Alicia. To be part of really just to be so affirmed as a facilitator, because what we do is we do it for everyone, but we also do it in isolation, and so we spend our lives filling cups. Sometimes our cups don't get filled, so it was really great to feel like to be aware that community is there, but also just to feel so embraced by that was great. I think for me, I had never heard about the 5 ways to well-being before. And as David was saying earlier, such an amazing fit. The more I looked at those 5 pathways to well-being, the more I realized it really, music, singing together is such an amazing fit, such a beautiful tool or instrument or vehicle for achieving well-being, I think. But also I think it's, it's an opportunity for me to elevate my own mindfulness as a facilitator, to really choose approaches and music and activities and warm-ups and even social activities that might come with that framework in mind. It just really unifies a lot of choices that I will make moving forward. So it was really so fantastic to learn about that.
And that I felt like came through a lot. One side of it came through as validating. It's almost like, oh yeah, of course we do this, and that's absolutely connection. And sometimes it feels almost too obvious. But I think what we've hopefully achieved with the tools is that it's just getting you to think a little bit of like, oh, actually, how could that warm up have this extra element of connection or this extra element of learning? Just to kind of, and for some people that will come naturally, some bits will be missed, because you can't necessarily have that oversight from everybody. But it was delightful to get everyone's experiences and everyone's unique little practical warm-ups, and we'll get a taste of that in the workshops a little bit later. And just like, oh, amazing, take that away, as a little gift. Carole, how about yourself in terms of action research?
What can I add? I totally agree with everything that's been said already. It's just been a joy from start to finish to be welcomed as well. It was totally inclusive as a group, even though some of us haven't met before. And but it was really useful to get some new skills as well. So some of the warm-ups that Nicola and Michael shared with us, and to go away and do it with our choirs, and we're still online just now, and see them totally engaged, whereas every now and then usually people would just sort of disappear for a cup of tea and come back. But actually when we were doing the flapping like eagles, that'll intrigue everybody now. They were like completely engaged, and we have from age 16 up to 92, I tell a lie. And so to see them totally engaged and flapping like, it was good for me, never mind anybody else. But they were totally engaged. And if nothing else for that hour, they're like completely focused and not thinking about what other rubbish is going on. So the 5 steps to mental health have helped greatly as well to focus and strengthen the purpose of what we do. So it's good.
Thanks so much, Carole. At this point, I think we just want to remind anyone if you've got any questions or any thoughts. Leslie's talking about how this seminar is already amping up those happy hormones, so that's dopamine being released and serotonin. Fantastic. And sharing that knowledge. And then Rachel's talking a wee bit about a charity in Glasgow, Commonweal, constantly seeing how singing in the ward settings in care homes improves mental health and validates people. They feel seen and understood. Which I think it really comes into that song in particular. Oh God, I'm going to get emotional thinking about it again. But which is absolutely grand. That's the way of it. We can be eagles later this afternoon, absolutely, says Michael. So we're going to when we go into the workshops, we'll find out a little bit more. I guess if there's any other questions, I'm trying to think. I suppose maybe, was there anything that challenged you a little bit? So we had a lot of validation. Was there any conversation, which you felt actually you came in, you don't necessarily agreed, or you kind of, I don't know, it's just something that kind of stretched you a little bit in a way that was new. I'll throw that out to anybody. I don't want to put anyone on the spot for this one.
I have one that I thought it was not even so much that I disagreed with it. I definitely agreed with it actually, but it was the way that it was handled. And it was a story, I hope she won't mind me telling it, but a story that Marika told. And She was talking about working, I think it was Marika, talking about working with one of her choirs, and she was going to introduce to them a Michael Jackson song. And she had a choir member who was very, very against singing Michael Jackson for, you can probably guess the reasons. And I was so impressed, and that's how I mean the word challenge, is I thought I really need to be engaging with that in the same way. She brought it with that choir member's permission. She brought it in front of the whole choir, and they had a conversation about it as a group, about that level of discomfort and what they could do as a group to support one another, and whether it was the right decision or not for the group to be singing that song. And I just thought that was such an excellent way that she handled it. That's how it challenged me, was to say, I could approach a similar situation with that level of diplomacy and democracy. And I often say that a choir is a loving dictatorship in many ways, because a choir leader does need to, have certain decisions that they make that come down just to the choir leader. But there are many situations where the group input is what's more important. And that's how you gain that trust and you build that inclusivity to where every voice is important. And so I just thought that was a great example, and the way that she handled it by that level of group discussion, I just thought was excellent. So that was for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there was so many. I mean, that whole chapter about choosing repertoire appropriately, about, and that was really where the diversity of all the choirs and your singing groups really came to the fore. Carole's talking about, obviously, how do you lean into things like bereavement, and do you lean into the sad songs? Do you allow that emotionality, or do you want to give people space from that? It was a very difficult chapter to write. It was still, and I think those examples really talk about a little bit around, for example, some choirs are more singer-led in the sense of, I know, I think of Kathleen, for example, it's run by a committee as opposed to the musical kind of facilitator, and others are more musical facilitator-led. So I think there's a lot of interesting nuances in how you balance those things. And I think those roles that you're talking about, the benevolent, dictator, or whatever, all those roles that we came up with, and that came from the survey that you would have heard, overwhelmingly so almost, there's a lot of hats to fill. And some of those are about setting boundaries as well, about how you co-produce, what's appropriate to co-produce with the choir, where do choirs want to delegate, musical expertise or whatever it is, decision-making about songs, and how, as you say, how do you come up with consensus? Because there will always be, in any group work, no one is going to completely always agree. And how do you do that in a harmonious way that is respectful of different mental health experiences, and in particular? Kathy, Carole, any other kind of thoughts off that, or to the other things that challenged you?
Well, I think it's interesting that Alicia brought that up, because that was, if I was challenged by something, it would have been my own. I really had to ask myself what kind, I know I'm benevolent and I know I'm a leader, but how much input do I actually want? And so I had to kind of check that, and I'm still checking it out, where my professional leadership is what I wear, but then where my ego kind of comes into that. But what is best for me and what I want, as opposed to what's best for the group. And I honestly think that opened a window for me that I will just be considering probably forever moving forward, because I don't know, and I still am not sure where I land on it. I know where I want to land, but to be honest with myself, I think I still want things to be the way I want them to be. I'm not out of a sense of control, but I want it to. I'm not even explaining myself very well. Obviously, I don't have. I'm looking for clarity on that, so it really opened up some questions for me that I will maybe in a year or so be able to report back and say, okay, I think I get it now. So, which I guess is a great thing about learning and being challenged. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that, that's one of the tools that we're really interested in, is that co-production model. And it's not, how, I think the example we gave that we did in the action research was, you look at things like musical repertoire, in the middle is complete co-production, 50%, which is probably very unlikely. It might be a bit biased left or right, or, is it completely decided by the musical facilitator, or is it most, decided by the committee or the choir, and I think there's a kind of interesting task there almost of using that tool for yourself and explain and reflecting why is it like that? Is that what you you want. And then also potentially giving the opportunity for the choir, the singing group members, to also answer the same question, almost blind, anonymously, and say, well, what do they want? And again, is there a miscommunication? Or, you know, there's some really interesting opportunities there. And obviously, there's only so much we can put into practice during these sessions. But again, that's what we're so hopeful about these toolkits, to kind of hand over and see how people use them in practice. Carole, any thoughts from you?
Just even having a safe place, like talking with you guys when we were meeting, was really good, because, you know, quite often the problems that are arising, only other choir leaders might understand. So even talking to the people you work with doesn't necessarily help. Whereas, you know, everybody's been through something before. So within the singing facilitators group, and so it was quite helpful to say, oh yeah, this is what happened and this is how I dealt with it. And so, yeah, just being open to those new suggestions. And that's why possibly a live network where we meet regularly is going to be quite good for our mental health as well, just to share and say, this is what's been going on. I don't know how to cope with it or what to do about it. And yeah, so thanks, guys.
Well, I'll give it a little bit of space for any last comments and reflections from those who are joining us. I'm just going to double check if there's anything in the Alison from Making Music. So I know many leaders of creative projects who are innately inclusive because of their character and their life experiences, but they would find it difficult to identify what they do, how they behave in order to define inclusive practice. How did you find it to analyze your own practice? Ooh, great question. We used a lot of tools. I don't know if anyone wants to answer that immediately, or Kathy?
Well, again, it's just, you know, in terms of just being a leader committed to ongoing learning, it really just, and challenge isn't the right word, but it just really has inspired me to just be always, you know, we get entrenched in well, I'll speak in the first person, not in the third person. I get entrenched in, this is the way I do it. This is the way I choose music. This is the way I engage with my choirs. And I like to think that it's, you know, open and inclusive, but it's really challenged me to look at that. And I think it will continue to challenge me. And honestly, if I am to live my philosophy, then it needs to challenge me every day. So it's good. It's opened up lots of questions, lots of answers, and then the answers lead to more questions. So I think that's just the nature of learning, and I'm here for it.
Thanks, Kathy. We're glad. We're very glad. I guess one of the examples that Nicola showed was one of the tools that we kind of, you know, we used a lot of these kind of online digital tools to kind of almost force people to think a little bit like, well, actually, even the socials or welcoming new members or the website, or how do you embed inclusivity in that? And sometimes you just need almost a mirror to reflect that back. And I think, as you say, everyone here is very inclusive, but it manifests in a very different way, and almost that mirror is really helpful as well. There's a really interesting chat going on about peer mentoring and that matchmaking as well. And maybe, again, a little bit of a spoiler alert for our plenary, but what we're hoping to do is we're going to continue the network informally, so that we're going to open up these sessions maybe once every 2 months as maybe the plan, so that anyone can join, and we'll send details of how you can join those sessions, and it'll just really be not even really facilitators as such as like just peer led. So we'll have a model for it, and hopefully that's something that can keep everyone in contact. But those of you who are on the call and like to join these sessions and just share these reflections and challenge each other gently and share practice can find that a bit of mentorship in that. Any last thoughts, Alyssa or Carole or Kathy, before we slowly start rounding up? Again, I just want to really, sadly, it looks like Marika couldn't join us for today, and I know Kathleen as well, who might be listening, would love it would be great to have you and share, but not today, but we'll find different opportunities for that, and you'll hear their voices throughout the toolkit as well. But just, I guess, any last reflections from the group? Alyssa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all the researchers who put the group together and allowed us to be part of the Action Research Group, because it was absolutely lovely, really uplifting, and I gained a lot of insight and a lot of new ideas, which is always absolutely lush. And I think it's absolutely wonderful to see people here on this call today who are obviously keen on the same thing. This is how the tide turns, so that choirs everywhere, people anywhere, can find an accessible, open, inclusive choir that can boost their mental and their physical health. And this is how it gets started. So I just think it's so exciting.
Deal. Thank you, Melissa. Kathy?
I'll echo that. I'm full of gratitude for the opportunity to be part of this, to have been asked questions and to have heard others' answers. It's just been a real pleasure. And for those of you on the research team, thank you so much for bringing feeling and science together in such a remarkable way. And I agree, the tide will turn, and it gives us such it's a very elevated platform from which to move. So super grateful to be part of all of it.
Thank you very much. Merci. If we're going for bilingualism. Kathy, and then Carole, any last thoughts? No.
No, just to say thank you to everybody as well. Thank you.
We thought we couldn't do a singing conference without obviously hearing some singers, but also to have some music and to do some singing ourselves. So I hope you really enjoyed those workshops. I know they're probably frustratingly short, so they always are, but just enough of a taster, and we'll obviously be able to pick that up in the toolkits. So I'm going to suggest we're going to do a bit of singing, and then we've got Marika, who's one of our action researchers, joined us as well, which is lovely. And some of you may have seen Kathleen in some of the breakouts as well. So I'm going to invite her to sort of talk a little bit, and then we're going to just have a bit of reflection time and think about what next for this network. How do we keep these conversations going? Because I certainly don't want this. I think there's so much value in bringing everyone together. So I'm going to hand over to Nicola, I think.
So I'm going to teach you a very, very simple song that goes like this. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. So there's only actually 2 lines to learn. And the first one you've heard 3 times, and I'm sure you can say it, is there's a river flowing in my soul. And the first line goes, there's a river flowing in my soul. Do it again. There's a river flowing in my soul. The next line goes like this. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. Could you do as if you are announcing that you are somebody? Can you do it like that for me with some kind of power pose? Here we go. That it's telling me that I'm somebody. I love it. I love the fact most of you wanted to do this. It's fabulous. And we know the last line already, don't we? There's a river flowing in my soul. Fantastic. So, first of all, we're doing a river. And actually, if you've been in the breakout session with me, you're going to be like, oh no, she loves a river. But you've got some options. You can either do your river this way, or you can do, actually, we did the river that way. Let's do rivers this way. There's a river flowing in my soul. And then can we touch hands at the end? Here we go. There's a river flowing in my soul. Brilliant. I'm going to play the piano. And hopefully you'll still do that, I'm hoping. And then I still want a really good power pose on, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. Here we go. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Brilliant. So I just want you in the chat to just pop in out of the 5 ways to well-being, which are connecting, getting active, taking notice, learning, and giving. What do we think we've just done there? Pop it in the chat. Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we've done all of them. Yeah. You've just learnt a new song without batting an eyelid. You've connected, because there's nothing like a good connection. We've got active, because we're doing some physical. We're taking notice because you're watching other people do stuff and you're listening to me as well. And you're giving by I'm giving to you, and you're beautifully responding back, to the point where I can't play the piano because I'm watching you so much. Lovely. So I just wanted to demonstrate to you how quick and easy it is with just a few little things to change a song up. But we can't stop there, right? So there's a river flowing in my soul. So that's one word at the end. And we can change this word. Can you pop in the chat a different word for me? But don't do what some people just did to me and put the longest word in beautiful Chinese and various different languages. Make sure it's English just for this exercise. I got beautifully caught out a minute ago. It was amazing. So yeah, there we go. I knew someone would do it. I should have precursored. It should be one word, one syllable word, one syllable. Lovely. Did you just put shoe? Someone just put shoe, didn't they? Amazing. I think we should go for heart. I love that one. Let's go for heart. Here we go. So on your, we're not going to do the river. We're going to do a different movement. Can you show me? There's a river flowing in my heart. What can we do? Show me something. Oh yeah, I love that. I love this one. I think there's quite a few of you doing that. And can you get your eyes on it as well? Oh yeah. So I think I'm going to leave it up to you how you get there. But that's where I'd like you to end. I'm going to play the piano and try to watch it. Here we go. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. Well, if that isn't a Twitter picture, I don't know what, Lewis, is all I'm saying. Mason, we've got time for one more. I'm quite tempted to do shoe, if the truth be known. Shall we do shoe? I feel like we could do shoe. Because that's the thing, right? When you're in an inclusive choir, it's good to sometimes go outside the norm when you get an example, and just everyone has really good fun with it. I'm not going to tell you what to do with shoe, but don't injure yourself by getting your feet up. That's one precursor. I don't want anyone falling over. Here we go. I'll leave it up to you. There's a river flowing in my shoe. There's a river flowing in my shoe. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my shoe. Amazing, brilliant. Sometimes you gotta go with it. That's the beauty of when you ask for an example, you gotta go with it. We're gonna go back to there's a river flowing in my soul. And I know I'm going to indulge. I wouldn't necessarily do this with everyone, but I know there's a lot of musicians around on this call. So I'm going to sing it, and I'd love you to harmonise. And I'm going to imagine in my head what is happening. So go and do your harmony. Enjoy. Here we go. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Brilliant. So let's just do one big wave, because that was marvellous, everybody. This is also a wave goodbye for me, because I actually do have to go and run my choir. And when we decided this conference, we were all online, and now I have to go and do it in live person. So I'm going to disappear off and get a train. But it's so lovely to see so many of you. And I'll watch the last 20 minutes. Bye-bye, everyone.
very quickly, should we get a group photo? I'm not going to share that video, but if you would like to be in a group photo for social media, we'll do a heart or whatever you'd like, a power pose. And if you prefer, you can turn your camera off or you can turn your camera on, but depending on if you want to be in the photo or not.
Get your eyes in. Get your eyes in.
Oh, there we go. There's some folks coming in. Excellent. Do higher side subtitles. All right, you ready? 3. I can only do half one, so I'm just going to do one here. I'll just do that. 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Nicola. We'll round off slowly as a group. That was beautiful. So I just very quickly want to introduce Marika, because you couldn't come for the panel for a bit, but I just wanted to kind of introduce you and maybe give you just a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, just to kind of talk about your experiences of the action research. And then we're going to go to the what next. Is that okay? So how was it for you? I think one of the kind of key questions, well, who are you? And was there something that really struck you from that process?
Hi, thank you for the introduction, Lewis, and apologies I couldn't join earlier. I'd only just finished work. So I was one of the action researchers on the project, and it was really quite enlightening. I work with a lot of different singing for well-being, singing for lung health, Alzheimer's, dementia, and stroke choirs. I've got 2 NHS staff choirs as well, so it's very much inclusive in that way, and an all cultures community choir, trying to break down boundaries in areas of London where it's a very mixed community and they needed a portal of getting together, bringing that together through music, which is fascinating. And to just share with different people working with different community choirs and different types of well-being choirs, how enlightening it is, to know that we all face the same problems. That was oh, I'm not alone. That was a relief, especially during lockdown and the challenges we found bringing it online and sustaining a certain energy and connection through being online, as well as also sharing different insights, different warm-ups, different ideas. We can become as leaders, although the focus is very much on our singers. For me, it was very beneficial to regroup as leaders, to get new ideas. It can be so solitary and isolating, and everyone leans on you. You're the one bringing it to the table all the time. So it was almost like a weekly check-in for us as well, to say, oh, I've got a block with this, or this has come up in my group and I'm at my wit's end because I'm just human and I can't cope this week. Especially when you're working with mental health and well-being, you absorb a lot of that, and it's important for us to remember that we need to share that, and we need to offload, and we need new ideas, and it's okay to ask for help. So that was my experience of it all. Yeah, so thank you very much. It's been insightful and a privilege to be part of such an inspiring group of people.
Oh, thanks so much, Marika. And it is, and it doesn't stop here. I think that's the nice thing about the program. Of course, the official part of the research project with the toolkit, but actually we're going to keep the network going. And so I'm going to put, the first link I put in is the Spotify, which is the playlist that is an open playlist. You can add things to it, and I'll try and add some of the songs that we put in. But what I was meant to actually copy is a Padlet. And what I'm just going to suggest now is just to change the pace a little bit. You've done a lot of listening, you've done a bit of talking, hopefully a little bit of singing. So we're just going to do a little bit of reflective writing, actually, just for 5 minutes, I think. I'll put on another song that someone suggested. And on the Padlet, what you'll see is something that looks a wee bit like this. And so a Padlet is just a different type of collective document. It should be anonymous unless you have an account. If you press the little plus sign, you should be able to add a new little box. What's nice is you can comment on other boxes. You can also upvote and downvote and respond to them. And you can answer as many questions as you like, but these are just prompts. So the first one is, think about a different way of framing it. So diamonds. So what are the insights that you found valuable from today? The squares are the kind of things that have been really useful, that you've something you've been mulling over for a while that's kind of squared off for you from today. So quite similar to the diamonds in some ways, but maybe a bit more practical. And circles are something that you're still resolving. So something you're kind of like, oh, I need time to ponder on that, or this is a challenge that I want to keep going on. So you don't have to answer all three of them, but just thought if you want to add to any of that, that would be great. What I'd also like you to think about was what next for the network. So what would you like to see next in terms of our meetings? At the moment, provisionally, we're thinking it might be, we'll keep it, we've been doing it on the Monday at 5 o'clock. I know that no date or time is going to work for everybody, so maybe that's something we can alternate over time, and we might have some way of forum and be able to discuss that, but maybe every 2 or 3 months, so every quarter potentially is what we're thinking. And again, we're not setting that in stone at the moment. I think we'll open that up, but any thoughts on that in terms of if we do a regular meetup? There's a few ideas in the chat. Throw them onto the Padlet as well, into this fourth column. And then finally, if there's any resources, websites, you're doing amazing work, chuck them into the last one, which is add your resources here, say hello, that type of thing. And what I've put into there is the website. Obviously, that's a good place to go. Our Spotify playlist. We also have a Facebook group, a Mental Health Inclusive Choirs, and we also have a Slack group. Now, the Slack group is, for those who've in the action research, we didn't use it too much. We used it a bit at the beginning, so I've repurposed it. I've taken away some of the older comments, and so we're going to try that as maybe one vehicle to keep the conversations going. So it's a bit of a work in progress. We're going to email this out in a few weeks, but if you want to be one of the first almost like pilot testers, you can join the Slack group here and now, and you'll be seeing behind the scenes, as it were, as we develop it. Is because obviously a lot of people couldn't make it all the way to the end. We had about 60, 70 people register. So what we're going to send next is we are going to share the videos of the sessions. We're going to share little bits of the workshops, just enough so people who couldn't make it, and then we'll also obviously send you the actual toolkit itself in the next few weeks. So do look out for that. And then finally, I guess in terms of what's next, you'll see on the Padlet already, but there's the Facebook group. I know not everyone wants to use Facebook, but some people like it. So there is a Facebook group there. We have a Slack group, and if you've never used Slack before, it's essentially a kind of online, it is free, you can access it for free, and it's an online networking, and so there's chats and lots of different things on the side. So we're going to send a bit more instructions about how to use that. That'll actually be embedded in the toolkit, because we think that may be one way of keeping the conversation going. And then, of course, we've got our next meetup. So most people who register for this event, we asked you if you're happy for us to keep in touch with you. So obviously we will send you the toolkit regardless, but then also in terms of that wider almost mailing list. So we'll send you updates in terms of these links, in terms of our next meetups. So if you said no to that, just if you remember that, then maybe worth just maybe letting us know if you would actually like us to keep in touch about those types of things. But I think most people did say yes, which is absolutely grand. I feel like it's a lot of my voice at the moment, so I guess maybe we've got time for 1 or 2 comments if anyone wants to share a reflection without writing. You're very welcome to unmute or put your hand up and just want to share a reflection or any thoughts about the network. There was a comment there about in hospital settings, which I think is a really valid one. Obviously, this project was very explicit around amateur groups, so non-clinical professionals, but there's clearly utility within a professional setting as well, we'd like to think. So yeah, very happy for that and appreciate the compliment there about hosting. Thank you. Anyone want to unmute, say any last words? Otherwise, I might hand over to one of our team, maybe, I don't know, from that perspective, or the action researchers. Are we all, 3 hours is also a long time. Marika?
No, I was just thinking that sort of it's one of those interesting things. If can I get a vote of hands of people who are already running choirs?
Well, I'm not, I guess.
Yeah. Sort of thumbs up exactly if you're not on video, if you can do an emoji. And those of us who are trying to set up a choir or thinking of it. All right. Yeah. So it's always great because everyone comes from different walks of life and different experiences. And I just wanted to input that even if you're thinking of starting up a choir, you feel overwhelmed with all of it, just remember that you've got a massive skill set to offer. This is really needed out there more than ever, and that you're going to do an awesome job. So just even by throwing yourself at it, and please do connect if you want to. If there's anything you're stumbling with, feeling overwhelmed with, that's what I believe this network is here about, and we'd love to help so that we can share things that we've learned or break down and go, help! So thank you very much for being here. Yeah, and we've just loved the sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marika. And definitely I think that is the sentiment. So I've put the link of the Slack directly in there. And let me just do the Facebook group in this, as well for those who like to use that. They're also linked on the website as well, and we'll follow up with that. Any other last comments? Otherwise, oh yeah, Kathy, on you go.
Well, I'll just say thank you to Lewis for facilitating this, for the music, for the and also for your inclusiveness around how you've approached all of this. So I just really want to acknowledge that and thank you for today and for for how you facilitated the whole project.
Thank you. That's very kind, Kathy. It's been an absolute privilege, and of course, I acknowledge Alexia from our team as well, from Science Kaylee, coordinate a lot of the Toolkit stuff behind the scenes. But no, I mean, I suppose to round everything off, unless there's anything else, is just a massive thank you to our action researchers who've spent so much time with us and been so generous with their time. And of course, the research team, everyone everyone's put in so much stuff into this. And then finally, of course, everyone who's attending today. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to getting to know you over the network, and to keep this going, please do spread word as well. Of course, a network is only as good as the people, so please do share on social media or on all that type of stuff, and we'll get loads of great conversations going. But yeah, okay, well, unless there's anything else, I guess we'll sign off. Thank you so much, everybody.